Siinä kaipuja pannokkaa aks noottuupiksi pukeeksi. Kanokkaa sitten kun itäkätksi siinä ksiipui. Muksi pukeeksi ksiskajaa. Nohkuunuja. Kanokka yksi skaapi pannokkaa. Manistri pujo piikistunnuun. Nukatohkuskenuja. Muksi näissä puukaatuumiksi ja muksi utoutuupissa. Manistri uusi utskeni puolesti. Se on kenokki kakoi muisti ja matapiksi taisi tapia muksi outuitsi katuumiksi. Kistunnuukitsi sinikuksennuuniksi. Mä kitää sapsa anniksi pukeeksi kumapitkuunnumuuksissa. Anniksi tsaa. Ja nousiksi kai kakko. Aamusti aamupinaapuhtsi kivia miituhtsi. Annessa ei naatuu kai ihkanaskni pannasti. Pat niskis kai ekaisamai suuksuutsi. Akaisam suotteina kuja. Annissa ei akat saatsimia. Kenessä akattutuitsi katuumia. Kenessä muumiksi outuitsi katuumisti. Anniksi äskskaatsimia. Akut sapuja muumiksi. Mutta itseni kuukoski uusiutsitsihpua. Akahkuunimia muumisti. Anmisti. Mitäskelevaatskutokki oppisti. Utsitsihpia. Kelkaakin ei tuota papaapsaatsimia. Muumisti. Kamitsiki itsitsahpia. Kelisäjäki. Marakuni itsimia. Ästäjä maksapuja putuitsika tuussa. Kekitää äkitsini kuukia oma tapkuunimassa. So, just want to say briefly, want to welcome you all. And I know we talked a little bit about the residential school the last time. And this afternoon I do want to continue and just talking a little bit about what's happening today. And not only in Canada, but more in particular for Siksika, for us. And then after that, then I'll talk a little bit about what the TRC were recommending and where that is at with that report. The stories that have been gathered here when the discovery of 215 came out in Kamloops. So when the stories came out in Kamloops with 215, the stories were many here in our community, and not only in our community but across Canada. So the interest of all the existing residential school sites was very high, and the word was let's go find those spots. And in Siksika we know of two. The stories that came out after that 215, those lots. So people were saying, what about here in Siksika? So that's what's happening right now. Not only here in Siksika, but across Canada. And it does take a bit of work from what I understand. And it does take a little bit of research to undertake. That's what I've been told. I've been asking questions to different ones and with our leaders here. And here in Siksika, the chief has assigned a task force that will undertake this and will take the leadership on that. So we're looking to them to give us the guidance with their help, and it's a very highly technical equipment that they'll be using. I don't know which company or if it's a university that's going to be helping. I don't know that part of the detail, but those are all going to come in. And nixie ako set up yung nixie napi ko is kinim ya makanistok is set up isa musti makasitkuni masi kamitsi can know it's. So I've been asking those questions to them, and from what I get back from them is there's going to be a bit of time. Certainly they will have to find the sites, meaning we had two that we are aware of, the Crowfoot Residential School and Ocean that's still standing, but there were more. And here down east of the reserve and up west, there are more residential school sites that those buildings no longer exist. Maybe there's some foundations that are left, but basically not too much exists of those buildings. But they will find those sites, and then when they do, then they'll start looking around those sites with their equipment. So that's what I've been told, and I asked how long will it take. So they don't want to rush them, but they do want to make sure that that it's done in a good way, and so it's going to take a bit of time for them to discover, and hopefully we'll get this done in good time. So when that starts, I don't know, but they are working on it to get this thing moving. So that's what's happening here in Siksika. And in the rest of Canada, I understand that they're in the same state as we are. They're doing researches, they're discovering those sites of residential schools, and I was just talking to a chief from Ontario this morning, and he was telling me that the old residential school sites that their elders told them where they were, there are some buildings now that are there, so they would have to be respectful and do it in a good way to use those equipment to find out if there was any unmarked graves. So that's what they're finding. So, and I told him, I said, you know, here in Siksika we have our reserve is large compared to some of the reserves in Canada, especially in northern places. The reserves are very small compared to Siksika. So we have a bit of land, and but those two are mandoki kumakumi muktu. So whatever available space they got, they use it today for, you know, makokitabs to probably houses, schools, and whatever. And so now that they're going to have to do something how to respectfully look around those places. So that's the kind of things that people are discovering, but the work will be done. That's the good work. The work will go ahead, and they will find whatever is there, and they'll let us know. And if there's none, they'll let us know too. So that's kanisto nikoki kopatsemuika ispeta pia makoki ispumuk samukse ayakutu itsigatum mistri kakaita pia ispumuke. There are many people that are aware of what's happening today, and so they're eager to help us and support us, which we're very grateful. That's what I hear, not only here in Siksika, but different reserves and people that I know are very grateful of people coming forward to help them in a good way. And it's going to cost money, and this is where I want to talk about the TRC report. TRC report was chaired by a man named Anistawa Mary Sinclair. Mary Sinclair is the chairman of that TRC committee. And their task was to makumui all the former residential school survivors across Canada a while back. And they did that work, and it took them a few years to do that work. And I remembered Murray Sinclair saying a couple of weeks ago, I sat and thought about the task that we were going to undertake, and as a chair. And he said, I kind of mentally prepared myself. And chitupa to pumi, umudak to chikato, kiumixitac, actually mixitac mutapitsani cokinaswo, manitskituichka. So ganixio from Amotapatsuichka, Aniwa nitskinipusi, dakitsanico, sikax. He said, I knew that the stories that were going to be shared were going to be very hard. And so he said, I was mentally preparing myself for those stories, and they were. And he said they were very hard. And he said, this is what hit me. But I was not as much as prepared as to the stories of those young children, young boys and young girls that did not go home. He said that's what really hit him. And he said he could not, it was hard to take. But those were the stories. And those were the stories that came from those residential school survivors across Canada, saying to them, Nixiskay itukapsiya mumichitutopispinat, Nixa, Mandatunuay nuanan, Nisay na kuyima. Nixa nixeskanavans wikiksi, and Nixa ostuawa, Matanikindan, Uchitapipyah. Stories were hard for him to grasp, simply because it was so unknown to the survivors. One day they were with a fellow student, 6, 7 years old, and the next day he was gone, and they didn't know whatever happened to them. He said the only ones that knew were the people that were teaching and at those schools. And they wouldn't give them the answers when they tried to find out what happened to them. Sometimes they were told they went home, and then when they finally get home, they were told they never came home. So those were the stories that they were that he didn't realize would really hit him and the rest of the committee. And now today we're hearing those stories in real life. We're hearing those stories of students that have told the TRC committee, here's what you're going to find. What happened to those? I can take you to those sites. And so Nixie, at the end of that work that they undertake, and and when it was done, I forget how many years it took them to do that work. And when it was done, Murray, it all those stories, and out of that came a report to the federal government and some recommendations, which are called call to action. If you Google it, you get the exact number. I believe there were 72 of them. But anyways, Itanina Murray, they put them all together, stories, and from the stories they got from the people and the survivors, they put together a recommendation and some strong call to action for the federal government to undertake. There were some things that we wanted to do, but it wasn't their mandate. Kako tukataya makukupim ksumuksi inse notice the residential school survivors. He said our mandate was just to gather the stories, and he said our mandate wasn't to take it further from there. So the only thing they had was those call to action. And it's interesting, when they found out the 215 in Kamloops, it wasn't the residential school that were responsible for the residential school, which is Ottawa, and different ones in that time that were responsible for that. It wasn't them that found those unmarked graves. It was the people there. And there again, it was the stories of the residential school survivors that really pushed those people at the leadership level back home in Nixie, Kamloops. And Nixie, so they went ahead, and they were the ones that found that 215. It wasn't Ottawa, it wasn't the government, it was Ustuawa. So in other words, it was the survivors, their stories, and their persistence that they never gave up, and saying, there are people there, we need to find them. They're there, we need to look for them. So as a result of that, they went ahead and they found 215. So if you listen to the news, Cowboys' band in Saskatchewan has over 700 now, and there might be more from what we heard. And in Brandon, Manitoba, there's more. And so they're coming out with, the numbers are increasing every week. And so on the one hand, the children are being heard that were under the grave. Their cries were heard. And Nixie, Okakstamaxi now have to be accountable for their actions. Marx back in those days. So that's where it's at in a nutshell, Nixie with the TRC, and it's going to cost money. And it's interesting to me as a former chief. $27 million. The First Nation to use to makapsam kasi Mumixika Mitchak. And Murray Sinclair said, where did that money come from? Only one of the recommendations, that one of the calls to action was that they needed to makapsam those graves, that the federal government needed to look for some unmarked graves. And they came up with a figure with $27 million. And that money had been sitting there. And then when the discovery of 215 and the word came out, Canada, and it spread all over the world. And then they supposed to get that, the money, to said, okay, we got some money. But they knew it, and they had the money, the resources, and to help Keystone First Nation across Canada, because some of the so they need financial support to be able to so in that way we need to look at the calls to action. if you have a computer, I would recommend to you Tamukstuk. Just Google it and punch in call to actions from the TRC committee, and they will list all those call to action. And in one part it talks about those children that never came home. So I just want to leave this with you. It's new. On what I mean by new, it's kind of, we knew it was going to happen, that this day was going to come, but it's new to the average Albertan. It's new to them. It's new to the Canadian people. And so we got the support from the Albertans, and now they're changing some of the names of the schools that were responsible for the residential schools. Their names were on those schools, so they took them off. So those things are happening by anfang sinapi ko eksitani iko Kristo tuai ni sitapi ko ekse. Kelkamu na ituta pispi some sinim tu sikas. So that kind of thing is happening. It's new to them, so they're moving forward to help Kistunon in that way. And so Kinixi, the Catholic School Board in Calgary, voted to remove that name from that school. From the percentage of what they got from the people, the parents, close to 80% of the people responded, Maxinos is that name. So to me, it tells me that people in Alberta and Canada are hearing, and they're doing what they can to talk to their leaders. And so that's there right now. And so I just want to ako see the values that we were taught. I get to do I get to go. It's a part of your pandakaya action against Reuploaded. That's what we were taught. So in other words, we are prepared spiritually, mentally, psychologically. We're not going to be lost. We're not going to have to say Akshikyo. We're going to go to what we know, our beliefs and our values. And those things have to sit up here. Action against Reuploaded. Makisin stow up is what we need to do to make it to the next day, to next week, and so forth. And so that's the beauty of Kistunon and the strength of our culture. It was never taken away from us. We never lost it. And it was, even though Nixie Napi Koiksi, they tried as much as they could to take that away from us. But it was there simply because of the strength of Gaksen Nixie. The strength of the values that we were taught has continued and will always be there for us to pull us through when we go through challenging times. So I just want to leave that with you, and so let's all continue to use those resources that are available to us here in Siksika. Thank you.